Every year, millions of people travel away from the humdrum of their daily lives to unwind or to discover and explore places that they've never visited before, usually returning with a few tales to tell. Some people, however, never return from their travels, and their stories are forever lost to mystery. Number 5. Everett Roose was born on the 28th of March, 1914, and from a very early age, he showed artistic promise, turning his hand at clay modeling, writing essays and poetry at age 12. He also kept a literary diary in which he would describe the places he'd traveled to. At age 16, he won an award for his poetry while attending high school in Indiana. And at Hollywood High School, he would serve as the secretary-treasurer of the school's literary club. In 1930, Roose traveled to Yosemite and Sequoia National Parks, as well as the High Sierras, returning there once again in 1933. In 1931, he traveled by horseback and by burro, which is a small donkey, through Arizona, Utah, New Mexico, and Colorado while exploring the Colorado Plateau. Then in 1934, he told his parents that they would not be able to contact him for the next 2 months as he would be traveling through the Utah desert. And so on the 20th of November, he packed his supplies on 2 burros and headed off into the desert to explore. 3 months later, his parents would start receiving his mail, which had not been collected at the post office, and they grew concerned. They decided to write to the Escalante post office in Utah, and their letter was read by Garfield County Commissioner H. Jennings Allen, who formed a search party with several men from the area. They would also be joined by scouts and Indians, who built fire signals and fired their guns in hopes that Roose would hear them and find his way back. His 2 burros were found unharmed in Davis Gulch just off the Escalante River, and a shepherd reported seeing him on November 19th near the intersection of Escalante Creek and the Colorado River, a particularly treacherous area. Upon searching that area, they found his campsite and the words NEMO, November 1934, carved into the rock face, a reference to his favorite book, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. The mystery deepened when a gravesite was discovered near the town of Bluff, Utah, after an elderly Navajo claimed that Roose was killed by 2 Native Americans who wanted to steal his burros. Bones and teeth that were unearthed at Comb Ridge matched Roose's size, race, facial features, and age. In 2009, DNA tests confirmed that they were indeed Roose's remains. But in 2010, it was found that the DNA software was faulty, and the DNA actually belonged to a man named Joe. The site of Roose's campsite and the Nemo carving is covered by Lake Powell, and no further evidence of his fate has ever been discovered. Number 4. Jim Sullivan, born in Linda Vista, San Diego, grew up living in a government housing project. He was a high school quarterback, and after attending shows by local blues groups, he decided that he wanted to be a musician. After marrying, he played in a rock band called The Survivors with his sister-in-law, Kathy Doran, before moving to Los Angeles in 1968. His wife, Barbara, worked at Capitol Records, and Jim played at clubs in Los Angeles, including the Raft Club in Malibu, quickly making friends with other prominent musicians like Lee Marvin and Harry Dean Stanton. He would also make an appearance in the movie Easy Rider and on the Jose Feliciano TV show. With funding from his friends, he would record his first album, titled UFO. It was released by a small record label in 1969, after being rejected by Capitol Records and reissued by Century City Records in 1970. He would record a second album called Jim Sullivan in 1972, but it was unsuccessful, and after his marriage began to fall apart due to alcohol abuse, he traveled to Nashville in 1975. He left Los Angeles on the 4th of March, traveling alone in his Volkswagen Beetle, and stayed over at the La Mesa Motel in Santa Rosa, New Mexico, after receiving a warning from a highway patrol officer for erratic driving. His room would remain unslept in. However, he bought a bottle of vodka from the town store before leaving. The next day, he was spotted on a ranch about 26 miles away from Santa Rosa. Later that day, he would phone his wife to inform her that he was okay, which she found strange as there was no reason to think that he wouldn't be. She pressed him for more details, but he simply replied, "You wouldn't believe it if I told you." She asked what happened, and he replied, "Forget it, just forget I said anything," and that he would call her from Nashville. His car was found abandoned at the ranch with his money, papers, and 12-string guitar, as well as clothes and a box of his records still inside. Thanks to the title of his first album, many people, including his wife, believe he was abducted by aliens in the New Mexico desert. Number 3. Born in the Scottish Highlands, Ian Mackintosh was the son of a governess and a naval officer. He would become a Royal Navy officer in 1958, and in 1969, he married Sharon Carter, whose father was also a Royal Navy officer, and they would go on to have 2 daughters, ultimately divorcing sometime later. He published his first novel, called A Slaying in September, in 1967, and over the next 3 years he published 4 more novels. He was the co-creator of the acclaimed BBC series Warship, which aired from 1973 to 1977, and would later create a spy drama called The Sandbaggers, which is often cited as one of the greatest spy dramas ever created. On July 7, 1979, Mackintosh, along with his girlfriend, Susan, and a good friend and pilot, Graham Barber, rented a single-engine airplane in Anchorage, Alaska, and after a test flight, set out towards Kodiak. The weather on that day was clear, but with high winds, and at 5:45 p.m., Barber sent out a distress signal, which was relayed by the air traffic controller at Kodiak Airport to the U.S. Coast Guard. 10 minutes later, searchers were en route to their last known destination, arriving there 30 minutes after takeoff, but there was no sign of the plane, debris, or the passengers. For 3 days, searchers continued to look for the plane, now presumed to have fallen, but to no avail. Controversy immediately followed Mackintosh's disappearance, with rumors resurfacing that he was a double agent for the Russian government during the Cold War, and that he had staged his disappearance to defect to the Soviet Union. Mackintosh's brother, Lowry, would later state that on the last occasion that he saw them, it felt like he was saying goodbye for good, and that Mackintosh's ex-father-in-law tried to find out more information on his case, but he was denied permission and told to not ask any questions. The plane was never found, and its occupants remain missing 42 years later with no further clues as to their true whereabouts ever being discovered. Number 2. On the 30th of June, 2014, 28-year-old Lars Maack boarded a plane in Germany with 5 friends and traveled to the Golden Sands Resort for a summer vacation on the Black Sea coast of Bulgaria. They booked in at the Viva Club Hotel, and for the next week, they would enjoy the sun, parties, and nightlife of the area. The day before they were to return to Germany, they were at a bar where Lars got into an argument over football with other German tourists. The argument got heated and a fight broke out, causing Lars to damage his eardrum and sustain injuries to his jaw. The following morning, he would tell his friends that the people he'd fought with had hired 4 men to beat him up, and he didn't know which of the fights had caused his eardrum to rupture. He visited a doctor who prescribed antibiotics and told him that he couldn't fly for a while, so as not to aggravate his injury. His friends offered to stay until he was fit to fly, but he insisted that he would be fine and told them to head home, which they did, leaving him in a good and relaxed manner, according to one of the friends. He checked into a cheaper motel called Hotel Color in Varna, which is close to the airport but located in a crime-ridden area. From this point on, Lars started acting strangely, with CCTV footage showing him pacing up and down the hotel lobby, checking the windows, and hiding in an elevator. He left the hotel at 1 a.m. the next morning, during which time he phoned his mother, Sandra, whispering that 4 men were following him and they were going to rob him or kill him. He said that he was hiding in a high place and was scared to move as he would fall to his death, and that she should cancel his bank cards. He then traveled to the airport where he consulted a doctor again and was advised again to not fly. But he signed a waiver taking full responsibility for flying in his condition. When a construction worker entered the examination room, Lars yelled that he didn't want to die there and ran out of the airport terminal, leaving all of his possessions behind. He's seen on CCTV running across the parking lot, scaling a security fence, and running into the woods, never to be seen again. Number 1. In 2005, 21-year-old Ryan Chambers was on a gap year, and he decided to travel to India with his friend John Booker, who he'd known since kindergarten. His family was not thrilled with the idea of him being gone for 8 months, but they knew that he loved to travel and that John was a level-headed man who he could rely on. On the 20th of June, the 2 men arrived in India, and although they were excited to be there, they felt that the difference in culture was overwhelming. Over the next 2 months, they started getting used to the country and traveled up the southern coastline to a northern city. Here, they would stay at an ashram, which is a place for meditation, yoga, and spiritual practices. They visited popular tourist attractions, and at one point had dinner with a local family, seeming to have come to terms with the differences in culture. On the 23rd of August, Ryan phoned home and told his family that he'd seen everything he wanted to and he was ready to come home. John offered to help him book his flights after noticing that Ryan had been restless for the last few days. But Ryan said that he had changed his mind and would be staying after all. That night, he spent a long time writing in his diary, still seeming restless, and as soon as the ashram opened its gates at 5 a.m., he left wearing only his shorts and leaving his money, passport, and phone behind. When Ryan was nowhere to be found, his diary was checked, and the last entry that he wrote the previous night read, quote, "If I'm gone, don't worry. I'm not dead. I'm freeing minds, but first I have to free my own." Searches turned up nothing, though a priest at a temple 6 miles away reported that he had fed Ryan, who was exhausted and distressed. He tried to convince him to stay, but Ryan refused and left the temple, disappearing forever. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.